Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Well, my screen's black. That's cool. I probably should have tested this. There we go. Hello. What's going on? Yes, exactly. It is confusing. Yeah, new screen, who dis? No, unfortunately, what a great way to start and do a fun segue about how awesome my cameras are. So as many of you know, when we were setting up the brand new bedroom studio, I'm going to stand up here because I got one right here. Sort of, maybe. There we go. When we were setting up the brand new studio, we bought these cameras, and these are the Blackmagic Cinema Pocket Studio cameras. But one of the key takeaways here is this thing right here. Let's see if it'll focus. Probably not. There it is. That connector right there is called a BNC connector. And it is a locking connector, which means it's got like a little L-shaped slot, and you slip it in over a pin, and then you turn it, and it twists and it locks. Whereas my traditional camera, which is a normal, it's a normal, but it's a normal camera, which I mean it's an EOS R5, just uses a HDMI connector, actually micro HDMI, so it doesn't lock; it can fall out. Hey, what's up, Cyber? Thank you. I so far so good. Remains to be seen. We'll see how I'm doing at the end of the year. We'll see how big my tax bill is here in a few months. Can we by the way, there is literally no point to this stream whatsoever. I apologize. When we launched, like I was saying before, when I create a new stream in YouTube, I use a previous stream settings, and that copies over, all the links and stuff in the description box, the tags. So and then I just update the title and the thumbnail. And when I do that, sometimes YouTube uses the previous cached version of the thumbnail. So the actual thumbnail says, "It's not even late, I'm just bored." We're not actually doing about D&D. This is live stream number 415, not live stream number 403. So I apologize if there was any confusion about that. YouTube sucks. I mean, we've discussed this before, but this is, like I was saying, I think it's in the description, that says, this is what you get when you don't watch movies, you don't watch television shows, and you don't play video games. When you get, when you have everything done, it's Saturday night, you're not going out. Oh, I should also add in, and you don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife. You don't have kids. You don't watch TV, movies, play video games. All your, friends also have all those things and do all those things. And so and you definitely don't go out to like the bar or the club. So what do you do on a Saturday night? Nothing. You just sit around. So this is why I stream. Most of the time I figure out, I usually have so many things to do, and I'm spinning so many plates. And certainly like during the summertime and stuff, when I'm like, for example, next month, I'm going to be going to GAMA, to the Game Manufacturers Association convention. Then I'm going to come back from that. I'll be home for like 5 or 6 days. And then I'm going to GaryCon, where I will be for about a week. Then I'm going to come home for about 2 or 3, 4 days. And then I'm going to Vegas. So March is an example of where I'm going to be, just in and out, running around crazy, streaming on the road and stuff like that, just so I can keep some streaming come up. God knows if you take a break off of a month for YouTube, right, your channel's forever canceled. At least that's what they tell you. And so March is a good example of how things are going to be pretty crazy. Good night, Mark Garblack. Always a pleasure to see you stop in and stop out. But February, I got nothing going on really. So there you go. Vintage says, my last child just got their own place and my wife left today on a business trip. All the chores are done. Absolutely nothing to do. It is glorious. Right. That's basically my everyday, Vintage. So I have not considered crime. Thank you, KC, for resubbing on the 9-month Premi. Appreciate the subby. Thank you. There you go. Listen, watch while you paint. Perfect. So anyways, can we fuck with your light's color temperature so that we can find a good balance to make your face less blue while keeping the background blue? That is going to be really difficult. And the reason is because my key lights do not have a red, green, magenta adaptation switch. So I cannot control the magenta or the green in these lights. I can only control the yellow, blue, right? So I can make them warm. I can make them, here's warm. Here's the other one warm, right? This is me. This is me with double warm lights. So again, this is just the key. So that's the cool key. That's very blue. This is very red, right? So, or yellow, if you want to call it that, right? So, now this is a very cool key, and then here comes in the fill, and the fill is very warm, right? Here's a warm fill. Here's a cool fill. There's the warm fill. Now, it is a cardinal sin to mix color temperatures like this, Vin. Whereas he goes, that looks sick. He says the warm fill looks cool. I mean, we could, whatever. We could experiment. It's fine. It doesn't have to be that warm. We can make it slightly warm. I mean, that's full cool. That's about halfway. And then that's all the way warm. That is, to be fair, you're right. I have my accent light here, could do that. And there we go. Now, as I said before, I could also get in, I could also get into the, camera itself and mess around with the color settings there and try to tweak it and change it. But remember, the camera is very stupid. You can only have one set of white. You can only have one white balance for your entire camera. See, we don't think about it because our brains and our eyes are really, really smart. But like when you look at snow, your brain tells you it's white, even if it's not white. Right. And it might not be. Like when you look at snow in, say, the shade or whatever, it's going to be a different color. This is how you get like that classic, like, right, is the dress, what is it? Is the dress gold or is the dress black type thing? Because a camera can only just apply one thing and your brain doesn't have the same response matrix to it does like it does to something in real life. So anyways. So it was either that or what I was working on. Let's see what we got here. Forge. I don't want that. I was working on, and by working on, I mean, wasting time. Oh, here we go. I was looking at, I was calculating what I was calculating the marginal cost and value of different actions in Wilderfeast so that when I created my own, it could come out to having the same relative value expression, which obviously is very important. What the hell is going on here? Reset. There we go. So obviously that's extremely important work to do. Thank you, Random Jin, for the subby with Prime. Very important that we get these the cost value things balanced and balanced. I mean, if you're going to add something to a game, right, don't you have to assign relative values to every single action in the game and make sure that your new thing that you added doesn't outcompete or isn't a trap option? Of course you do. Duh. Cinefos says balance, bleh. You say that, okay, but history has shown time and time again that when, GMs just like throw something into a game, well, they usually, here's the truth of the matter. They usually lean towards it being cool, which usually means it's also really imbalanced. You say by the way, I endorse nothing that is going on in this stream. This is just Vin. So I'm not responsible for the visual look of this stream. This is entirely a Vin doing. So just so we're clear. Right. And I think that is I think that's a more nuanced take, and I do like that high size, right? Balance is important. It's just not the only important thing. It's something that I think a lot of people struggle with Daggerheart, and I've talked about this before. And I tell them it's a fiction first game. And so they go, oh, so the rules and the mechanics don't matter? And I say, no, fiction first doesn't mean mechanics last. It just means fiction first. Mechanics can still be a very important part of the game. They can still be an important consideration. They should matter, and they should matter a good chunk of the time. But when push comes to shove, the thing that is the most important is the fiction. And so, yeah. It also depends on like the structure and the nature of the kind of game that you're creating and who you're creating your audience for. We unintentionally made the KLC colors. Yeah, we kind of did. Actually, no. I would have to change the light behind me to sort of a magenta color. Right. If we were talking like it's kind of like a purpley magenta. That's technically what we have. You are definitely not wrong, Cinnabos, but I will say that, so for example, since we're being horrible, in the example of this here, so we've got four types of actions, right? We've got, well, in the base game you have four. I added a fifth, but you've got a mighty strike, a precise strike, a tricky strike, and a swift strike, and a clever strike. So, if ignoring this one, because that's the one I added, according to, I applied a metric and an algorithm to try to calculate what I thought the value was, and the cost and the values all end up being 0, 0, 0, except for this one action, which I did think in the game was a little bit stronger than other things. But that's okay. Like, I think if something's a little bit stronger, it's okay, right? So the rest of them come out to 0. This one comes out to 0.5. But if I went in and made my new thing, and I made it, take 2 actions instead of 3 actions, and suddenly the value of this action becomes 2, and suddenly now it's worth 1.5 compared to 0.5 and 0. Now it's a problem, right? Because it's just too good. And it crowds out other options, and it crowds out other actions, and I think that is where it becomes problematic. So, and I mean, some of this is also, you know, a matter of opinion, but the blue looked better. Oh. Again, I'm not responsible for today's stream. This is 100% Vin. Anyways, what's up, Zarian? Okay, thanks to you. I now own Fabulous. I have not read it yet, but we'll soon. What do you think is the best part of the game? Honestly, what do I think is the best part of the game? I think the best part of the game for me is the ritual system. For sure. I like that the ritual system, that you have spells from your classes, which are very defined and very mechanical, and they're very, like, you know, combat focused. This fire spell does, you know, 20 fire damage, or, you know, this healing spell heals 40 hit points, and you've only got like 10 of them per class, you know, 12 of them per class. There's not that many, and they're very, very, very mechanical. And then everything else in the game is handled by the ritualism system, and it's very flexible. It provides you with a framework to decide how difficult it should be and how much it should cost. And instead of getting 450 spells in the book, which all do these really niche, very closeted things, the game just says, hey, look, here's a ritualism discipline, here's elementalism. And now you can use that, and you and your GM and whatever else, you can make it this really cool moment. And here's some rules for creating a ritual, and it still has a resource cost. It still uses your MP. So it's not like broken, and it's not, you know, overwhelming everything. Ultra dark is better. Super dark is better than everything. All right, we can drop into the. There we go. There's this is the submarine look. Orange and blue, maximum contrast. Looks so ridiculously bad. Looks like somebody has no idea how to use their camera. That's what it looks like. Yeah, so okay. So I figured you were going to say that's fire. So I'll give you an example last night. So I had planned in our techno fantasy sort of high. I guess it's a techno fantasy game, Fabula Ultima. There is a, you know, powerful Magitech empire who are like stamping out magic users, and one of the characters played by Tim, his name is Drake, and he is like kind of like the avatar of fire of his people. His people are like they come from this fiery temple, fiery land, and the Empire is invading their land, and Tim has to try to stop them at the fortress of Infernius, which is like the primary fortress of his people. Anyways, so they're racing to get back there in time to help prevent the attack. And Bob has got an airship, or well, it's an aether ship, the Exodius. Anyways, so we had some simple clocks, and there was one clock representing how close the Empire was to attacking, and there was another clock representing how far away they were. And Bob's character has a bunch of skills in Wayfarer that get him better travel rolls. And so I told the guys, so we had this plan. They were going to get there. There was going to be this big, you know, fight or whatever. And then, you know, Smith couldn't make it. And then literally like an hour beforehand, you know, Kaz said, hey guys, I just had a terrible day. You know, he's got some health problems. He said, I'm going to take a knee tonight. And everyone said, that's cool. And it was like, hey, do you want to cancel? And I was like, well, you know what? We could just run the travel part of the session. It might be fairly short, but we can at least, you know, do that. And everyone said that'd be cool. And it turned out to be like, it took like 30 minutes. So it was like one of the shortest sessions of all time. And that's because the very first roll which normally would have been a D20 travel roll. I remember 6 or higher gives you a danger, and a roll of a 1 on the travel roll gives you a discovery. Well, Bob's character downgrades the danger roll. So the threat roll becomes a D20, becomes a D12. And then Bob's character gets a discovery on a 1, 2, or 3. So Bob rolls the dice. He gets a 2 or a 3. So the very first roll was a discovery. And so I, asked them questions, whatever, I had some ideas. And basically they kind of discovered like a pocket of like a hyper accelerated pocket of aether stream, almost like a jet stream, but it was like basically a rapid running river of aether, and they could use it to like hyper accelerate, but it would be very dangerous and probably would have involved some sort of clock and maybe potentially them taking damage from not just the physical shaking of the aether stream, but like the magical backlash. And Tim's character, who is, again, an elementalist and has the ritualism discipline, Tim said, hey, can I use ritualism? You said this is like magic. This is like aether. This is like pure magic. Well, ritualism is the ritual skill that has to deal with magic. Can I create like an energy field, like a protective bubble, like almost like a Star Trek Shields or a Geller field, for those of you who are familiar with 40K? He didn't use those terms, but around the ship. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we calculated it, figured it out, made the ritual. They made it a group check. People aided. There were a couple spells, a couple skills, a couple skill rolls made, a couple, fabula points or bonds spent, and Tim succeeded and surrounded the ship in a protective bubble. And I basically said, okay, you guys, Roderick's at the helm. His identity is ex-Imperial Navy space pirate. I go, so I'm not going to call for a skill roll because Bob's character is really good at that. His identity kind of gives him the carte blanche to not even have to make a roll. And because of the shielding, this is nothing that he can't handle. So no roll made. And you guys basically make 3 days progress in 1 day. And now you guys are well ahead of the Imperial Navy that is going to be attacking. And you have 1 more day to go. And Bob rolled instead of now they were in safer space. So the D10 or something became a D8. Bob rolled like a 4 or 5, which means nothing happened. No encounter, no problem. And so I said, okay, well, you guys reached the fortress several days before the Imperial attack fleet arrives, and we'll end the session there because, I had some stuff planned and I didn't feel like, reworking it on the fly, and we were already down 2 PCs anyway. So, and everyone said, that's cool, and we talked about plans for KLC and some of our get-togethers, and we use the time to sort of do a little bit of planning and stuff like that. And Bob is going to be leaving the campaign here soon because Friday nights when we play, he got an opportunity to play in a volleyball league, and Bob wants to take advantage of that. And so I don't blame him. Stay active and be stuff. So he's going to do that. So we're probably going to try to set up a scenario where hopefully there's a good opportunity for him to sacrifice before he has to dip out. And yeah, that's it. So, anyways, long story short. Yeah, it looks like a submarine was on fire. Will Dave Wesley be at GaryCon this year? No idea. I have 0 idea. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing at GaryCon. I don't know if I'm the thing with these conventions is, Stephen Glicker is like, you should come. And I go, okay, well, I kind of don't have, whatever. And Glicker's like, it's cool. I got a room. And then I'm like, okay. And so like, I never actually know if I'm going there to like hang out or if I'm going there to work. It's never very clear to me. I don't get paid. That much is clear to me, but but so if I may be at GaryCon working at a booth. So like, I don't actually know what's going on. Any negative things about FU I should be aware of? Yeah, the combat can be kind of lengthy and involved. And yeah, the game says it's low prep, and it is sort of. My group is not as interested in the combat, and so I don't try to make it an effort. They're not trying to make powerful characters. They're not trying to combo or wombo the system. They just want to do cool stuff and roll dice. So my job is a lot easier, I think, than some of the other people who have been playing the game, you know. What's up, Lugs? Here's the TTRP version of usually it's called Fuck, Marry, Kill, but you can play GM or shelf it. Daggerheart, the One Ring Fabula Ultima. Oh, saved by the tip.
Clubster roll tip $25. You know, a one-page RPG can never be perfect, and that might enable you to actually create/finish one. And it's not that I'm dying for a new one-pager, but I really think it would be one of the best possible data points for future projects.
Cluster, I thank you, by the way, for the tip. The problem is, I could never create something that I don't want to create or have a good idea for, is what it comes down to. And like, you know, so you're absolutely right. Everything about what you said is 100% correct. The problem is, if I had a really cool idea for a one-page RPG, I would do that. What's interesting, I talk a lot about on this channel about bottom-up versus top-down design. And what's interesting is when it comes to like making something for a role-playing game, right? Like a very bottom-up approach is you go, okay, I need to create a role-playing game. You know, it needs to be this long. I need it because I need sales, or I need to create a micro light RPG to fill a gap in the market. Let's work from the bottom up till we get to an idea for an RPG. That is how I like design dungeons. It's how I design a lot of like, you know, it's how I build stuff. But in terms of like actually getting an idea, I work completely opposite, right? I work top down. I have to have a cool idea. I have to have a inspiration. I have to be passionate about some sort of idea and then create it from that perspective on. And so, you know, even if it made total financial sense, even if it made total logistical sense, it's going to be very impossible for me to just go, oh, I should make this because that's what I should make. That's just not how I operate. You know, I'm interested in what I'm interested in. I get ideas for stuff that I get ideas for. The problem, I'm aware enough. So there's a whole little like side tangent here. And again, I'm being broadly generalized, but like some people are professional game designers, respect. You know, I asked Jess, Redicop, you know, I was like, well, how do you get all this stuff done? And she said, it's my job. And I was like, oh yeah. And like, I know that sounds really crazy, but like, it never really had occurred to me before. Like when I worked as a data scientist for, you know, big insurance companies or, you know, venture capital funds or whatever, you know, I didn't care about the analysis. You know, sometimes, you know, there might be an interesting thing that came across my desk or, you know, something like, like I remember one time I was doing some analysis into the housing market, and I myself was in the housing market looking at houses. So it was kind of interesting to kind of see it from a different perspective and to really dig into the analysis. And sometimes, even if you don't care about the subject at all, you just get sucked in and you get but most of the time I didn't give a shit about what I was analyzing. I was paid to analyze data. I was paid to build models, and that's what I did. You know, I did my job. I did it well. I did it professionally, but there was limited passion there, for sure. That doesn't mean that I hated my job, you know, just the opposite. I felt very richly rewarded for my skill set, but I didn't like have this like, you know, go get 'em attitude. Well, it's crazy to think of this, but for some people, for a lot of people, that is how they approach role-playing games. It's how they approach RPGs. It's their job. I remember there's a great article, or there's a great interview where George R.R. Martin is interviewing Stephen King. And George R.R. Martin says, like, I got a question for you. How the fuck do you write so fast? And, you know, Stephen King's laughing and everything like that. And when that, I just saw it I guess this is old, but I just saw this the other day. And it reminded me of years ago. I mean, I'm talking over probably close to 2 decades ago. I was at a Gen Con seminar with R.A. Salvatore, Bob Salvatore. right? The author of the Dritz books. And there were a lot of aspiring novelists in the audience. And they were asking a lot of questions. And one of the questions that was asked was like, you know, how do you get through writer's block? How do you deal when you have an element of the story and you don't know how to solve it? Like, how do you? And Bob Salvatore said, he goes, I take a copy of my house note. I take a copy of my house mortgage and I tape it up over my computer monitor. That's how I get through that shit, you know? And I was like, damn, okay, you know, respect. And so there's definitely like a pragmatic viewpoint to a lot of people who approach this as like I need this to make money, and let me get this money to pay my bills or do whatever. Okay, so that's number one on the financial side. Okay, then there's number two on the financial side. Number two on the financial side is people who, I'm going to use this term loosely, want to get rich. Okay, and by that I mean there are a lot of people who, and I use the term get rich loosely, but there are a lot of people who are basically like, I like money. I have, whether deliberately or accidentally, I have built up an audience. I have built up a fan base. I have built up a whatever. And I would like to cash in on that. And I would like to be able to, you know, secure the bag, as they say, and try to go out and make $1 million or $2 million or whatever the case may be. Because, you know, I very much doubt that those people need that money, but they want that money. They have, for whatever reason, they have financial goals that, you know, go beyond just, you know, paying their bills. Well, that's not me. You know, I've never been really motivated by money. Maybe if I had a family and, you know, stuff like that, I would feel a little bit, you know, I had kids that I had to send to college or something. Maybe I would feel differently. If I was drowning in debt or something, maybe I would feel differently, but I don't. So the concept of the professional writer is definitely not me. And also the concept of the person who, you know, wants to get the bag, who wants to secure the bag. That's not me either. Okay. Now this is where I'm going to sound cynical and horrible, but just bear with me. Then I think there are also people who aren't motivated by money, but, and I'm telling you this as someone who maybe, possibly, has a little bit more inside information about this than you do. There are a lot of people in this game, and by this game I mean like the YouTuber, dungeon tuber turned would be, you know, game designer or whatever. Or even if they're not a game designer, there are a lot of people who are in this game for lack of a better word, the clout. They're in it for the validation. They may not understand consciously that they're in it for the validation, but a lot of them are. And you know, that's a double-edged sword, because there's a lot of people who are then very hurt, okay, by criticisms, negative content, you know, a negative feedback about them, people shitting on them in Reddit or in the comments or whatever. You know, they take it personally. So for a lot of people, even if they don't publish to make a lot of money, they publish because they love the accolades and the clout and the, you know, I don't know, the self-approval or what, you know, or not the self-approval, but the public approval, the community approval that you get from that kind of behavior. Well, I hopefully this doesn't come as much as a surprise to you all, but I don't care about that either. Right. I'm, you know, when someone shits on me in a YouTube comment, I heart it and pin it. I put it to the top of my comments. I welcome dissent and dissension. I encourage people to call me an idiot if you think I'm an idiot. I've been, getting crapped on since I started this channel. I've never chased clout, and I don't really care about it. So there's no desire in me to make something just so that I can say I made something, or that I'm popular, or that I can like pat myself on the back and feel better about it. Right. And so a lot of the motivation for doing these things is gone. So what's left? Just because I have an idea or I have a desire, and it just won't go away, right? It just won't die. And so the idea then is, do I care enough about something to want to spend a ton of time to produce it? And so Self-Confessed Cynic says, are we still pretending Derek is going to publish something? And what I was trying to say earlier was, like, as an example, last year I ran a Torchbearer campaign for 2 groups of my patrons. So that's 10 people. We ran about 20 sessions total. This was running Roll20. I had a vision for what I wanted the game to look like, right? Which is that I wanted the character sheets to be done on the grid, and I wanted the inventory to be tokens, to be icons that the party could move between their character sheets on the grid. In other words, basically ignoring the character sheet. To do this, I spent, I don't know, hundreds of hours learning how Roll20 API works. I'm not much of a JavaScript programmer. I upgraded to Roll20 Premium. I wrote, thousands of lines of JavaScript code, and created dozens of macros. And then I went into Photoshop and I made every item in the game got made into a pixel art icon, so that it was something in the game, right? Like in the normal game of Torchbearer, you would just write rope on your character sheet. But in my game, there was no character sheet to write rope on. Instead, rope was a circular icon that had a pixel art image of a rope, and you had to have it dragged into your character backpack slot area on the screen. So I spent an inordinate amount of time. Now, relatively speaking, it's less time than you would spend developing a game. My point is, I spent a ton of time and effort so that I could make what I wanted to make for the Torchbearer experience that I wanted to give to 10 people for, 10 sessions each. That's the way that my brain works. Like I am happy to spend an incredible amount of time working on something, but it has to be something that I'm truly believe in, and it has to be something that I truly think that I have a good vision for and a good idea for. And if I don't, I don't.
I am strong.
Thank you, Dr. Daggerheart. Thank you, Dr. Daggerheart, for 10 months, almost a year on the adventure. Thank you, Dr. Daggerheart. We'll have to get Zavad at a wedding on Valentine's Day, game on night. Oh yes, I forgot it was Valentine's Day entirely. Oops. I guess we should be red then, right? For Valentine's Day. Woo. Now it's really it's really horrible now. Here we go, full epileptic here. There we go. It's terrible. Anyways. But thank you, Dr. Daggerheart. No offense, Derek, but that's some acute levels of autism there with your Torchbearer setup. Lol. Autism is such a complex and involved and intricate, set of conditions and circumstances. I don't necessarily want to say that it is or it isn't. I will simply say I do not mind spending a lot of time to get things the way that I want them to be, if I care about them. And I typically care a lot about role-playing games. Forvor, thank you for the Gamma Fund. Appreciate you. Too late here to stick around, but also, how's the 2024 DMG coming along? Well, Forvor, like I said, we will probably not do that as a live stream, but I mean, I basically think the gist of it is basically, right there. I actually think that there's I have like half a page of notes. The problem, Forvor, if I could be honest with you, a real quick talk, is like, I don't think I can do a script. I think even if I did a video, I have to just basically do a live stream to nobody and just hit record. I'm still worried that that's going to be too long, but I just feel like, I think everybody, you don't notice it, but everybody's pretty wooden when they're reading off of a script. I just think it's particularly noticeable with me because because you're used to seeing me have to sit and think and, well, so, right. It's, you're getting my stream of consciousness. You're not getting like the, hello. Today, we're going to be discussing Dungeons and Dragons. Does the 2024 edition really make the game that much better? I'm here to tell you 3 reasons that I think it does, and how it might revolutionize the way you play your tabletop role-playing games. Cue snazzy little intro, right? I think it's just very jarring for people who are used to hearing me speak in a much more conversational tone. Right, exactly. Oh, I thought that was going to cue my intro, my music. That's all I got. I was going to cue the night school music, but we don't have that. Yes, but not in the way that you think it would be. How about that? So yes, but not in the way that you think it would be. See, look, already you're intrigued. You're like, oh, a lot of Nights of Last Call nights. There we go. Well, yes, that's the whole idea there, right? It's late night. We're getting groovy. We're getting into it. Right. It would be very uncanny window. Exactly. You're used to the, also, you say something, you type something, I respond to it. We're having a conversation, yes, it's still, live stream unidirectional, but it's still a conversation of sorts. Anyways, you're more interested in my thoughts. Yeah, I've got thoughts. I don't know if other people will agree with them, but I have thoughts. So is the game fun for dressing as Squirrel Ash? Absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe, but I mean, it's just kind of like the thing about it is, like, I'm having some experience with people who are diagnosed autism in my life. There's a lot of special interest with the hyper focus. I just tend to do that with everything, right? But I don't do it to the exclusion of responsibilities, and I don't do it to the exclusion of my life and management of that respect. So I don't view it that way. I just think that I'm really interested in doing the things that I need to do, but I don't do it. But I'm not like, oh, I'm so fascinated in this, I forgot to feed the dogs or eat today. No, trust me, I ate today. Right, Logan. I mean, for me, it's all about creating the kind of experience for the player that I want them to have. I want people to have I want to curate a specific type of experience, and I want to make sure I deliver on that and do it the way that I think is the best way to deliver that and to get it done. So, no, well, Shazbot, no. I mean, we've talked for a long time about, like, even some of my most diehard patrons, right? People who have been supporting me for years, people who are $50 a month, $100 a month members of my Patreon, don't watch my videos or don't watch my streams because there you go. It's too long. Get to the point. Right. So, which is it's a very odd place to be. But so even some of my own most diehard supporters are like, yeah, it'd be cool if you did a video I could actually watch, every once in a while. And well, if by different, you mean it was 4.5 hours long. No, I didn't have any of that prepped. None of that was prepped. That was all off the top of the old noggin there, Shazbot. I mean, we voted on that topic like that day. So, I mean, I thought about it, but I always think about, like with a first look, I can't, what pages? I mean, I had my PDF open, but I mean, my PDFs are always open. All I have to do is, go file open, type in the name of the game and pop it open. Anyways, no, yes. Okay. I did show up with a short list of systems, but to be clear, Shazbot, we didn't even get to talk. We didn't even cover all those. Well, and the only reason I did that, Shazbot, is because one of my patrons, Self-Confessed Cynic, said he would give me $20 if I talked about 5e first. So the only reason I even did that was because of that. So I'll be honest with you. I will disclose the secrets behind the curtain here gladly, easily. Yes, to be clear, I don't think that video performed well. We can actually look. We can see how well. Let's see how well that video is performing here. Okay. All right, it's got 2,300 views. That's better than usual. The CTR of 5% is pretty good. That's definitely better. It's definitely better. Let's see if we can do some audiencing here. Well, so this is the one thing that always kills me. This actually really isn't that actually different, which is actually shocking. So this is the thing that I'm actually surprised by, because this actually tells me something really interesting. So this is the watch behavior, okay, of how many people basically are people who watch most of my stuff, watch some of my stuff, and are basically literally new to the channel. This is usually about this, give or take. Same thing here, right? This is how much watch time came from subs versus non-subs. To be clear, this metric right here is such a massive outlier in YouTube, and not just in YouTube, but also in DungeonTube. Like you'll maybe some of your favorite content creators before have said things like, "Hey, and by the way, our metrics show that 80% of you who watch this show aren't subbed. Make sure you subscribe." Right? I am literally the opposite. Right? Most of my watch time comes from subscribers. So, anyways, what this tells me is that the people who are watching this are the same people who always watch my show, and that this actually attracted more of my existing audience, not a new audience, which is very interesting, right? So that tells me that this got some people who are subbed or regularly watch my content. More people who regularly watch my content watched this than normally do. But it didn't actually attract like new people. Not really. So, which is interesting. Whereas, like, if we, if we go to, like, I don't know, maybe Dungeon World 2. Like, Dungeon World 2, you could see had 20% new viewers, which is a lot more, right? But even still, it was mostly from, now this is watch time. This is actually based on hours. It was still mostly from my subscribers. Anyways. But you can also see that after 3 days, the video essentially performs no views, which is pretty standard for me, right? Like, after 4 or 5 days, it's there's nothing to be gained at that point. Anyways. Here we go. Dolmenwood. This was pretty popular. Did we do 2 Dolmenwoods? We did do 2 Dolmenwoods. Ooh, Dolmenwoods was even, it was a little bit less. Like I said, normally my new viewers is about, I would say 10%. So technically Dolmenwood was a little bit less than I would normally expect. Simon, I share my channel's information all the time. You can see where, like, my Dolmenwood video, where it came from. Like, 40% came from suggested videos. Yeah, that's true. Normies have no fucking idea. All right. That's you know what? Vin is right. All right, let's try something. When's the last time we did something actually popular? What about this one? Can D&D be killed? The state of D&D killers. Okay. If something didn't do, all right, we could check some of this other stuff here. Let's take a look at this one. Did this one do well? No. It did 5,000 views. Okay, so this is actually a popular stream for me. 5,000 is a lot for me, like a lot. By the way, when you see that revenue, that is not from ads. To be clear, this includes super chats. So I promise you, like 130 of that was from super chats. Anyways, nope, 10% new viewers. Wow, crazy. All right. Well, by the way, this doesn't really shock me because I only gain like 50 subs a month, by the way. Like, I gain subs extremely slow. And so this doesn't really surprise me at all. All right, here's Nimble. Okay, so we had 5,500 views. Okay. Huh. Oh. For some odd reason, it didn't have data for this. Damn. Well, you can kind of see that we got more watch time from not subscribers. But that's unfortunate. We didn't, for some odd reason, that didn't have enough viewer data to show this. Interesting. Draw Steel, Launch Day, Fabula Ultima, Rain, 13th Age, Starfinder. This was, by the way, still one of the biggest surprises for me. It's like how badly, not badly, but they didn't do that great. Like my Starfinder videos, they didn't even, this didn't even get to 2,000 views on Starfinder, which is crazy. All right, here we go. Draw Steel Deep Dive. Is this the 4E D&D revival we've long awaited for? This got 17,000 views. So this was one of my top streams from last year. So here's the views by date. You can see that Now I only get 5 to 10 views a day from it. And not enough viewer data to show this report. Oh. Apparently you can only watch it for the first 90 days? Interesting. I don't understand that, but what is this doing? Okay. I guess I have to click in it, I guess, for this advanced mode. Okay. Anyways, so 25% of my Draw Steel views were from new viewers. So there you go. I don't know why it doesn't have it here, but here. Okay. So this is much more telling. Watch time from subscribers was down to 56%. So almost half of my time was from people who are not subscribed. So this really did reach, right, new people, as opposed to my, because normally this is 80-20, right? 80% subscribed, 20% not subscribed. So this was over double the impact to non-KLC subscriber members. So this really did reach out and attract people. Shocking, right? That when I covered a game that was very popular and, had a huge presence, that it did better at reaching people. Let's take a look at Cosmere. Now, this is Cosmere first look. How did this one do? Look at this. This was still shocking to me, right? Cosmere only did 7,000 views. I'm looking for Daggerheart. Here we go. Daggerheart, 20K. This was our #1 stream from last year, 2025. Daggerheart, the game that could break D&D, right? 20K views. So I gained 100 subs from this stream. It's kind of a janky measurement, but take it for what it's worth. Again, closer to 50-50, 60-40. Interestingly, this may not seem like a lot. Normally this is 0%. Okay. Or maybe it's 0.1%. So this quite literally got like 100, and this got like 500 times more female viewers than my normal views do. I should also note that most of the time, most of my viewers are in these age demos. They're in the 35 to 65. And so this definitely skewed me towards a younger demo. So there's that. And then if we look at the watch behavior on the advanced analytics tab, new viewers accounted for 33% of the total watch time for this video. So this was triple the new viewer count. So, or triple the watch time. So really was a genre. Well, the dagger hype was indeed very, very real. And then what happened? Now, what's interesting? Do you feel like in general that dagger hype has kind of cooled off? I do. I think it has. And I kind of expected it when Critical Role made their decision. I feel like a lot of content creators were like ready to pivot or started a hard pivot into Daggerheart, and then Critical Role dropped it, and they were like, they just pulled a hard left and just went, back to D&D or whatever. For sure. And, I was even looking like, Spencer and Rowan did like a AMA the other day, and it was like, I got more views, unfortunately. So I am the #1 Draw Steel channel. This is true. What about Shadow Dark? It's been a long time since I don't remember when the Shadow Dark stream even was. Beowulf wants to know why my female demo is so low. Because I cover role-playing games. Everyone's female demo is so low. If I remember correctly, someone who I can't name does like representation for Ginny D, and I think Ginny D's is 5%, and that's Ginny D. So take that for what it's worth. And again, I don't have any actual facts to back that up. Right? It was just an anecdote that I heard at a mixer, you know, at a after hours party. But yeah. Simon, because beating the dead horse of D&D is still the best option than trying something new. That's why. So Raydalk says, I'm not a Daggerheart fan, but I was hearing it everywhere. Now, not a peep. But Zarian says, totally. Daggerheart hype completely dropped off when CR went D&D. Yeah, we even did the analysis, remember, on the Google Trends data that one time, and we actually saw that. We literally saw that after they made their announcement and everything, that it was like the amount of people searching it and dropping it like went way down. Yeah, I mean, I still think it's a beautiful game. I think it's a great game. I think it has incredible potential. I think it's a lot of fun, and you know, I still want to run it. We built this studio to play Daggerheart. So true, Raydalk. I think we should remember there is depth. You know, the people who watch YouTube are not necessarily representative of the actual people playing these games. For sure. I haven't watched a single episode of the Bleem campaign. For sure. Lug says the Daggerheart hype felt pretty engineered and paid for. Look, if you're going to start accusing people of engineering and paying for hype, then you have to throw, I don't know, 90% of the TTRPG games on the fucking pyre and sacrificial pyre. You know, I see people hyping games and the rules haven't even been written yet because they got a paid sponsorship from, you know, somebody, or it was like a quid pro quo situation, you know? I don't know if it was engineered or paid for. Derek didn't get paid to cover it, and it did well. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it did better than they thought it was going to do. So there's something to be said about that. From a sales perspective, they thought it was going to do X, and it did like 5X. So, yeah. So, Forivore says, Derek, you need to run it first. I don't think you will enjoy it as much. Now, Forivore, there's a couple of things. Number one, I have run it before, just not in the final release. But I'm also curious why you think that is. I mean, it's a fiction first. Right, but my main problem with the beta was the action tracker and the fact that you took stress on a miss. I didn't mind the attack roll at all. The beta had an attack roll. So it didn't bother me too much. In fact, if anything, I prefer the attack roll in some ways, because I always felt like dealing damage as established by harm. I don't care about, what you call tension is not what I call, maybe it's not what I call tension. The way I build tension in a game like that is not through hit point depletion. So the things that I do to build tension typically do not rely on, you know, attack rolls or any of that stuff anyways. Yeah. The reason I bring that up is because, look, we are who we are. And a lot of people come to these games through trad D20 games. But even outside of that, I have found that if I make a soft move, and this is with people who are new to PBTA, by the way, if I make a soft move where I say something like, the ogre raises his club and brings it smashing down upon you, what do you do? And that's a soft move. And then the person says, I dive out of the way or whatever, and they are essentially, I say, okay, defy danger or defend or something, depending on if we're talking Dungeon World. People feel really good about that. But I've always found that people have a hard time when the GM deals harm. Deals harm is established as a hard move in PBTA, which is to say where the DM just says, take 5 damage. I think it goes against people's inner senses of free play or fair play. So I have always, to be completely honest with you, I've always struggled with that a little bit in making that kind of hard move. For whatever reason, I think people are very sensitive to it, and they always have been. And, you know, I try to, as much as possible, allow them to get a roll in, you know, for sure. As opposed to just saying, like, you know, make your roll, right? So, hold on a sec here. This thing just fell out. There we go. And again, I mean, I've played, you know, a lot of PBTA over the years. I played a lot of Dungeon World, you know. Never overestimate how normal Derek is. He does not have normal people opinions. So yeah, I mean, I think it is a good transitional game. It still uses D20 rolls, sort of. You know, it still uses hit points and all this other stuff. And you still have like cool little powers and abilities. I think that's fun. Cynical Dragon, I don't know. I mean, I know that supposedly, right, Jeremy and Chris are working on something big or something, but I don't know that we've gotten any more details about that, to be honest with you. So. So, boy, Yotape, maybe. Yotape says, my players are having fun with Daggerheart. They are 5e players, but I'm not that into it since the combat takes longer than what I would like. I play a lot of Blades in the Dark and PBTA, which makes a lot of sense, right? Daggerheart is a step towards, you know, trad, quasi-simulationism, gamism, towards gamism, a little bit more meat on the bones, a little bit more complexity, a little bit more doodads to push in combat, and that is going to slow things down compared to like me when I run Blades in the Dark. I run a skirmish. You know, if there's a gunfight in the streets, right, with blades drawn and flintlocks produced, I will literally resolve that entire conflict with a single group check, and move on. You know. Now, so it's interesting. You said, will also depend on your players. If they play well, it gets repetitive. What does play well mean? Because that already kind of concerns me. because it's that makes it sound like they're playing to win, and that they're viewing Daggerheart as a campaign as competition, or the combat as sport. And I think if that is how they are approaching the game, or how you're approaching the game, I do think that is very problematic. So that could be, you know, the issue for sure. So, yeah, I think Daggerheart is terrible for combat as sport. Utterly shit. Right. You know, you can have opinions on this, you know, but it is the case that Daggerheart doesn't really have failure. It doesn't have failure in like the, you know, you lose, go home, right? I mean, yeah, like the party can get completely wiped out to a person, and yeah, the story could take an extremely, you know, hard left turn. You know, my players, like we're playing Fabula Ultima, right, where the players can just choose to surrender. My players are excited to like get wiped because they're like, man, where is this story going to go? It's going to be crazy. Man, we're going to get some bonus Fabula points. Cool. Now, that doesn't mean they're like playing to lose, but they're not here to try to win the game. They understand that that is a fundamentally flawed mindset to have in a game like that. For sure. Actually, what you just described here is, I think, probably for me, the single greatest success of Daggerheart, because in a game like Blades in the Dark, or in a game like Powered by the Apocalypse, specifically Dungeon World, once your players get a high bonus and everything that they roll is a 10 plus or a 6 in Blades in the Dark terms, the GM is quite literally forced out of the conversation mechanically. The advantage of Daggerheart is that roughly 50% of the time, the players, they could have a plus 55 to hit. Okay. Or plus 55 modifier. Roughly 50% of the time, they're going to roll with fear, which not only is going to mechanically give you a move, but it's also going to give you a fear point. So that is such a huge change from like Dungeon World, where if the players have a +3 or +4 bonus, or the players are aiding each other and doing all this other nonsense, right? They are going to potentially roll 10 plus, 10 plus, 10 plus, 10 plus, 10 plus, 10 plus, 10 plus. And while as the GM, I am still free to do my job and set up soft moves and make hard moves as appropriate, it does kind of mechanically put me out of the game, because I'm not able to do what I need to do on a 6-, which is make as hard of a move as I want, right? My power and my voice in the game is sort of diminished or even reduced. The brilliant part about Daggerheart is that because bonus and success are as an independent access of fear or hope, it means that no matter how good or high of a bonus the players have, there will always be whatever it is, 45% or whatever, 46% chance that the players will roll with fear. Now, they might succeed with fear all the time, but that's still making me part of the equation. And that means that I get to, and I don't care if my players succeed all the time. I mean, here's the spoiler alert. Now, Osuli says, in Fabula Ultima or Daggerheart, you will win anyways. I don't want to, this might be a huge mindfuck to all of you, but guess what? In this game, you win anyways. In this game, you win anyways. Pick almost any game on the shelf behind me, you win anyways. Even if it's not a fiction-first narrative indie fairy game, you could be sitting there going, I'm a hardcore player. I play Pathfinder 2 where skill matters. And you're like, yeah, how often do you win? 99.9% of the time. Mark Seifter told me that the game is designed for me to win that much. So congratulations. Okay? You're the adult that won dodgeball against a bunch of kindergartners. Congrats. You know, there's no honor in it anyways. So why don't we just stop pretending? Oh, the illusionism that people buy to. It's crazy. It's crazy how just the blinders and the cognitive dissonance that people put on themselves. It's insane. Yeah. Shazbot speaks truth. He said, my players win that much, but still never stop complaining about the times that they did die. So let's see here. Right. Yes, exactly. I had a player get a +3 in a World of Dungeon game, and they just did whatever they wanted to, and he said it felt weird. Yes, that is an experience I've had many times. Imagine in Dungeon World where you could actually get a +4. In Dungeon World 1, you could get a +4. It was utterly, completely destroyingly broken. Yeah. So, well, I mean, the difference is, Logan, like, there are two ways that you can make the players always win, right? One way is to say, hey, here are these rules like in Daggerheart and Fabula Ultima, where we'll throw stuff at you, and if your character loses, you can choose to avoid death, or you can choose to surrender, and that way your character doesn't die, and the game doesn't like take this hard left turn. The other way is to design a system such that it doesn't have that, but it's like, because people are like, oh, those games are so weak, you can just avoid death. Man, what do you think dying 4 is? What do you think trade in all your hero points to auto stabilize is? What do you think death saves are? It's the same thing, just done in a way that like makes you, I guess, feel better about yourself. But it's only if you just are completely, head in the sand and not paying attention at all. Now, Kyoj, I agree with Kyoj in here. I do think it's fun, right? We know we're going to win. How do we get there? That's cool. I like that. That's fun. Now, there are TTRPGs that you can play where our success is neither guaranteed nor neither guaranteed nor known. Okay. A lot of older school games with their very harsh death rules and, oh, you touched the door, it was covered in poison. Make a saving throw. I failed. Your character is dead. Oh, I'll make a new character at the same level as everybody else. Nope, you won't. You'll re-roll at level 1. Okay, well, I'm going to roll my dice then. Okay, well, I'm going to make another wizard. Well, your intelligence was a 6. You don't qualify for a wizard. So I can't even make a new wizard? Nope. Sorry. Right? And when people hear that, they go, oh, that sounds terrible. That sounds awful. I go, so what do you want then? What do you want? What do you you know what it's like? I'm saying this because it's Valentine's Day and because I'm single. I've had many women, girlfriends over the years, never a wife. I've dated many women, and more than once, I've had this essentially conversation. Hey, your insert holiday, birthday, whatever, is coming up. What do you want? Well, nothing. Wait, so you don't want anything? No, I want something, but I want you to want to get me something. And I want that thing that you want to get me to be something that I want. And I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Just tell me what you want, right? Like, why can't we just be honest with each other? Like, isn't that cool? Like, right. You should just know. You should just know. No, I don't know. I don't just know. I'm sorry. That's why you know what? You want open and honest communication. This is me openly and honestly communicating with you. So I feel like, and and again, my perspective is of this is only as a man, right? Having a heterosexual man, right? Having relationships with women. But I feel like this is kind of like what a lot of RPG, this must be like what being a game designer for like a broad RPG audience is, where like your players as a community tell you like, no, my game, the game has to be skilled, and I have to have a chance of dying, because otherwise it's a pansy game, it's a story game, and if you can't die, the game has no meaning. But also, I totally don't ever want to die, and I want to be really sweet and really powerful, and oh my god, it's going to be so powerful and broken. But also, if you make the game too easy, I'm going to complain on the forums about how your game is too easy. And if I was a designer, I would just, you know, I would just lose my shit immediately and instantaneously. So yeah, again, it boggles my mind, right? It blows my mind. So I don't understand it. Yeah. Strength 18 wizard sounds awesome, Shazbot. Just ripping people apart. It'd be awesome. There you go. Got to start killing your players all the time. Derek's all or nothing game design takes are hilarious. Listen, buddy, all gas, no brakes. Nobody wants to open honest communication unless nobody wants open and honest communication if it's something they don't want to hear. Right? You're like, yes, I want open and honest communication, but only stuff I agree with. So. Right. Well, Zipperfist, there's a reason I'm single and why I've had many ex-girlfriends. Foravor, Derek, should a golden opportunity be something to respond to or just ignored? Interesting. I mean, you should say what I don't exactly know what are we talking about, like in the context of PBTA? Because I would say that in the context of PBTA, you're supposed to say what honesty demands, and you know your job is to represent the fiction in an appropriate fashion. So I would say that you should never ignore a golden opportunity. I think that your job as a game master in Daggerheart, okay, I would still say your job in Daggerheart is to create and reflect a fictional reality, and that part of that means that when a golden opportunity occurs, that the world responds. So, you know, I think you have to, you know, you have to double down on that, right? For sure. I think that's part of your job. I think that's part of your job is as a game master in a PBTA game or in Daggerheart, which is, you know, locking it in. So, well, the problem with what you just described, Foravor, is you said if your golden opportunities do nothing, then what are we even doing here? So, unfortunately, Foravor, what you just described in your mindset, if let's say you weren't playing Daggerheart, you were playing 5th edition D&D or Pathfinder 2nd edition. That mindset that you have is exactly why people fudge the monster's attack rolls. Because I could create a CR7 encounter for my level 5 party, and it's supposed to be a really challenging, tough fight, and I could roll behind my screen, and my monsters could miss every single attack roll. Right? And I might go, what am I even doing here? The monster crits. Because it's about the tension. Right? So that attitude that you are suppressing is, I think, maybe a little misguided. It depends. It depends on your cup of tea, what you're trying to do, and how you're trying to do it. You know, for sure. But right, but I think that core principle is still true, even in Daggerheart. Daggerheart is, you know, predicated upon the monsters make attack rolls. So if an archer aims a arrow at you and you make you ignore it to continue to trying to, work on picking the lock, then my golden opportunity is the archer attacks you. Now, again, in normal PBTA, quote unquote, a golden opportunity like that, you might deal harm as established, which is to say the guy just gets shot. And I have told you before, as I said before, that has not always gone over particularly well. Even with people who are, quote unquote, in the know. And remember, a golden opportunity is as hard as you want it to be. And if I'm being completely honest with you, a lot of times in those situations, I still usually end up letting the player do some sort of defy danger move. Often. To that end. So unless, obviously if it's something different, like if you go, hey, those are, that, I don't know, the room is on fire. If you run through it, you're going to take mark 3 hit points. The player's like, okay, well, I run through it, and I'm going to go, okay, it does 3 hit points of damage, right? Like I've established the harm, and now I'm dealing the harm. But if part of our if part of our predication and rule is that, you can just take damage, or that attack rolls occur, because there are no attack rolls in Dungeon World or PBTA. And that's one of the reasons why I said that activating an adversary and attacking with that adversary isn't actually that hard of a move. And you should feel really, really, really okay triggering it often in a game of Daggerheart. When people are like, it's so lame, like there were 7 monsters and I just triggered the boss every time because it was the most effective. I'm like, no, man, I'd be triggering those things left and right all the time as GOs. And I would feel really good about it, because in Dungeon World, I'd feel like a dick about it because I'd just be like dealing out auto damage. But in Daggerheart, I'm like, look, it's just an attack roll. At the end of the day, right, we're using this framework to kind of end up with a D&D-like feeling thing, right, where the monster gets kind of a turn every turn, roughly, but they have to roll, right? They have to have a chance to fail, chance to miss. The character has a dodge ability or a bonus ability. Remember, you don't have any of that in PBTA. You don't have an armor class as such. You don't have an evasion score. So if Daggerheart didn't have an evasion score, then I would feel much more comfortable just, saying you hit and you do damage or something like that, Like I could see a world, right, where you remade Daggerheart, you got rid of evasion, you kept armor, and instead you had an evasion. You had armor and evasion, and I'm trying to think of how you would do this. The GM would attack you, and I'm just like trying to think of something here. Like, okay, you still have damage thresholds. This is like trying to keep the game, somewhat still Daggerhearty. Okay, so you'd have armor boxes and you'd have evasion boxes. Okay, and unlike armor boxes, evasion boxes would probably reset after every scene, right? Like as soon as you had like a chance to, like, I don't know, catch your breath. And then when you took damage, right, if it was 1, 2, or 3 damage, you could mark that many evasion boxes to completely cancel the hit. But it was an all or nothing situation. Like if you took 3 damage, you would either mark 0 evasion boxes or you would mark 3 evasion boxes, right? There was no way to mark some or all. In other words, you either missed or you hit. Anything else you would take off of your armor boxes. If that was your game, yeah, it would be more like Guard from Mythic Bastion Land. Yeah, basically. If you did that way, then you could probably do something that is more like what you're describing. And, when you establish harm and I say the band of archers takes aim at you and you're like, I ignore them and I'm going to keep focusing on the door. I'm trying to figure out the puzzle or the ritual so that we can deactivate this trap. And then I go, okay, you take 3 damage, and the person says, okay, I'm going to mark 3 evade, or I'm going to mark 3 guard, or I'm going to mark 3 evasion boxes to ignore the hit, basically. And then once you run out of evade, or if you choose not to use it or whatever, then, maybe then it would go to your mark. You would have to mark hit points, just like with armor or something like that. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, and you'd have to figure out a million ways to different balance it. But you could do that. You could also do something where, like, maybe if it's like if it's a crit, maybe you can't mark evade. Like you can, like if it's a crit, like against you or a hit against you, you can't mark evade or something like that. And by the way, like if you did this, you almost, then the GM doesn't have to make an attack roll, and the player doesn't have to make an evasion roll, right? Evasion just becomes a resource, just like guard. Basically, yeah. At this point, we're redesigning Mythic Bastion Land, so yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, no, please. Some love from your phone. Well, thank you, Agile Monk. Appreciate you stopping by. No sympathy dates, please. I'm much better than that. So I do see that we got a classic bots in there. Thank you. Yeah, no, we don't want views. Anyways, and maybe that's a different, that's obviously an entirely different game in that respect. And the one thing I will say that I respect about that version of the game is that now the GM doesn't have to at least make an attack roll. So that's actually pretty respectable. Well, thank you, Agile Monk. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to you as well. Not quite the Valentine's Day that I would have expected many years ago, but you know what? Here we are, and we're here together, Agile Monk, and boy, I couldn't be happier about it. Cheers to you. Agile, are you going to be at any of the cons? Are you going to be at Gamma or PAX or GaryCon or Gen Con or any of that stuff this summer? Clearly, Dungeon World 2 needs stat damage and guard now. Right. Mythic Dungeon World 2. Why not use the Daggerheart SRD to make your fixed version of Daggerheart? Because like, okay, there's two reasons. Number one, because people are right. Okay. They are right. Which is, I feel like nobody should be hacking Daggerheart until you've run the session, until you've run the full final retail release version of the game, that came out in May or June. Probably for at least 30, 40, 50 sessions, right? I mean, at least 10. Now, if I'm being honest with you all, I've been playing role-playing games for a long time, and I know, generally speaking, how things are going to play out. They're like, oh, you're just white rooming it. No, I'm not white rooming it. Like my situations are a bit more nuanced than white rooming it. And so, but I appreciate that. I think that's generally speaking, I would even say that to myself. I would say I don't give reviews of games, right, until I've really actually played them. I don't even think a one shot counts. So that would be number one. So that's the first thing. I don't feel like, even if I do have ideas and I know, not just think, I know that they would make the game better for me. I don't necessarily know that means that they make the game better. So what's the point of releasing that? Number two, and this is the most important part, I don't think anybody's really asking for that. That's the issue. Like just another pile of, another pile of gaming logs on the fire. It's like, cool. Thanks. Is this really going to help me run the game better? Probably not, Well, that sucks. It would have been cool. Well, keep us informed, Maybe later in the year then. It'd be cool. Get you out to one of those cons, Buy you a drink or something. Or a coffee or whatever. It'd be good to see you. Hey, what's up, Votacrid? Hey, sorry if this isn't appropriate. I'm developing a TTRPG, congrats, and have a poll related to dungeon generation that I'm still trying to get answers from GMs about. Okay. Well, unfortunately, you can't post links here, so I couldn't actually share a link, but I mean, it's kind of inappropriate, but not entirely. I don't really care. I mean, we're all just hanging out here and shooting the shit. Simon is 100% right. I think people would sooner want Daggerheart with the fiction first cut out of it than with more of it. And boy, are you right. Very true. And also, of course, you know, there's also something to be said about the fun of it. Like, if I have a bunch of archers and they're aiming at our rogue, and that's a soft move, and then I say, Rogue, what do you do? And they say, you know, I keep working on the lock, I keep working on the trap or whatever. Even in a system with guard or evade, when you say they shoot arrows at you, and then you say I mark evade, it still kind of feels like there's no chance, right? There's no risk. There's no uncertainty. And uncertainty is part of what makes the game full of tension. And so that is something that, you know, attack rolls do. Now, this is why I would say I would never probably want to get rid of the damage roll, because there's a big difference between Mark 3 hit points versus Mark 1 hit point. So I do feel like there's something advantage to be had from the randomization of that aspect of it. This is something that like Blaze in the Dark does with the resistance roll, because it's a random roll to determine how much stress it's going to cost you to, you know, resist that. Because it goes, look, yes, you can resist any consequence. It's just going to cost you, 6 stress or 5 stress or 4 stress or 3 stress or 2 stress or 1 stress or 0 stress or whatever, you know. And it's true. The resistance roll is one of the best mechanics that you will ever see. It's a fantastic thing. The other thing that's fantastic about the resistance roll is its ability to make the players feel like they are cooler than they actually are, because you speak the horrible consequence into existence, and then the player tells you why that didn't happen, why that isn't true. That's a very empowering step. It's a very important step. So, yeah, this will be my first GaryCon this March, so it'll be pretty cool. Yeah, Nimble's great. I mean, to be fair though, Nimble does have, if you roll a 1, you miss, so it does still have that thing. This also, though, that requirement is also what leads to, in my opinion, the one thing in Nimble which is very inelegant, which is the way that when you roll with, is it a disadvantage or advantage? I don't remember, but it's like you have to look at your dice from left to right, and you have to process the first one or something, which is a little bit awkward, right? It's a little bit weird. So right. Oh, yeah, I mean, that's how I do it. You know, I will describe how, you know, you'll roll like a 3 on your, you know, prowl roll as you leap from, you know, see the rooftop of a building across a busy street. And I'll describe how you know, you fall 4 stories and splatter against the cobblestone ground, and they'll say, nope, my character's actually awesome. And I throw my flintlock pistol over a nearby clothesline, and I ride it like a zip line to the other side, land in a sick, you know, roll. And as I come up, I've already reloaded my pistol, and I'm like, fuck yeah, you did. That was awesome. You know, roll with prowess or whatever, you know, see what you get. Yeah. That ability to say no is very, very, very powerful. What would Magic the Gathering be? It's an interesting question. Like red, green, Naya, maybe. Like there's got to be some red in there because it's a very chaotic game. You have very little control. D20 is very swingy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Red, green, white. So like Naya or something. I don't know. Yeah. So red, green. Very Timmy, right? Gruel smash. I mean, it feels like that to me, but yeah. So okay. I only add a little bit of the white there because of the the popularity and the mass appeal. But yeah, red, green. Oh yeah. OSR. Well, yeah, OSR is definitely red, black. Yes. Correct. Very correct, Simon. So what is Cuss saying here? Cuss says, so if that's so great, why not just have the PBTA style down mixed or upbeats in the first place? Just make all rolls be mixed beats and have the players react with stress rolls. Well, because you'll quickly run out of stress and then everything would be horrible for you and you would never be able to actually succeed. Yeah, I mean, PBTA has to. PBTA probably does have to have some sort of blue in there for sure, right? Some sort of. That's true. That's true. I'll tell you what the OSR is. They're Golgari. Always digging up. Always repurposing and reusing the dead. But I don't know. But I don't even remember what we were talking about now. The OSR is built on top of corpses. Yes. Right, like it was built on top of giants. Now it's just built on top of corpses. They're all just trying to kill the one that came before them and make the truer game. I am the truest OSR game. No, I am the truest OSR game. I am the truest OSR game. Right. So it's a very interesting area. I will say that. What is my guild? I mean, my favorite Magic card of all time is. Well, my favorite Magic card of all time is like technically Shivan Dragon, but like my favorite Magic card of like modern-esque era, and by it's not that even that modern because it's pretty old, is Voice of Resurgence, which is a green-white Selesnya card. But my favorite like good card. Yeah, Voice was good, but it wasn't that good. My favorite good card is of like the last, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years was Siege Rhino. So I do like Abzan, but that's not really a guild. That's a Tarkir clan. But I ran that for a very long time. You keep people honest, it happens. I mean, to be fair, a lot of games are the same, so I can't really fault OSR for that in that respect. Alrighty, folks. Well, seems like conversation is we've kind of reached. We're just talking about Magic the Gathering at this point, so I'm going to I'm going to raise the lights here a little bit. Bring back some love and here we go. Look at that. We're back to normal. Welcome everybody. Yeah, it's going to be a busy March. Ooh, that reminds me. Hold on a sec. Look at this. Invitation to a gamma party with Darrington Press and Leader Games. What? Ooh, fancy. Hanging out with Darce and the people from Darrington. Should be fun. So, very cool. I don't actually check this email as often as I should. I just checked it today, and I was like, oh, nice, cool. I need to RSVP for this, since I apparently am going. Well, luckily, I have a good relationship with the Darrington Press people, and particularly Darcy over there is pretty cool. So they've always been pretty cool at reaching out to me, which I think is really neat. Remember, I've told that story before, but you may have never heard. You didn't maybe not have heard of that. At Gen Con last year, so Daggerheart had been out for a couple months, right? And they were doing a big Daggerheart seminar at Gen Con, and I was in the audience on my phone, and I joined. And at that point, I had done 40 hours of Daggerheart content, and I joined the live stream of the event that I was at, and a bunch of people in chat were like, and Darrington was having a mixer for people, and I wasn't invited. They didn't really even know who I was, even though I had made all that content, and I wasn't mad about it or anything. And then now Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat had known the former head of Darrington, this guy named I think his name was Ian, but he had been pushed out / he left a few months before Daggerheart came out. So Stephen didn't really know the Darrington people that much. And so before the con started, Stephen and I walked over, and he's like, I'll introduce you to the Darrington people. And we were kind of talking to them, and they were kind of like, oh, well, we'll see you at the mixer. And we were kind of like, oh, what mixer? And they're like, oh, you guys aren't on the list? And we're like, no. And, Stephen was like, oh, put us on the list. And she's like, no, sorry. It's full. And I was kind of like, nice work. We didn't even get on the list. So anyways, a couple days later, the next day or whatever, 2 days later, at the actual con, I hop into the chat while at the event I'm at, and a bunch of people in chat were like, oh shit, it's Derek. Nice last call. What do you think, Derek? What do you think of all these announcements? And apparently the people who run Darrington Press were also monitoring their chat, and they were like, who is this guy? And they looked up my channel and saw what I did. And then they sent me an email while I was at Gen Con. They're like, Derek, we just saw your channel, whatever. We'd love to have you come to this event that we're having. And so I ended up getting invited to that event anyways, which was pretty fun, which is pretty funny. And that was pretty cool. Yeah, they make, what do you make of the other Darrington games like For the Queen? For the Queen's interesting. I played it once. I thought Candela Obscura wasn't my cup of tea, but yeah. Yeah, every time I see Spencer, it's always like, oh my God, Derek, we need to hang out. Here's, call me on my phone. I'm like, dude, I don't have your number. What is this? Please, buddy, help me, help you. I actually have a question about Play to Find Out in Monster of the Week. You always prepare a mystery. Would you still call this Play to Find Out? No. And in fact, that's why I want to make a hack of Monster of the Week mixed with Brindlewood Bay, because I, Derek, personally think Brindlewood Bay is way more interesting of a mystery game, even though it's not a mystery game, than Monster of the Week. So, yeah. What would you could call it Sunnyvale or something. And it's instead of Brindlewood, you can call it Sunnyvale, and it's Monster of the Week, but with Brindlewood Bay's mystery rules instead. And I think that would be way cooler and way more interesting. And if you really wanted to really kind of capture the Buffy essence, you would make Monster of the Week with Monster Hearts with Brindlewood Bay. And then you could have a completely immersive play to find out game that would have, investigation and kicking ass, but also, some romance between, supernatural creatures and all that stuff. But yeah. But that's also because Derek personally doesn't, I like the idea of a mystery. I don't want to solve one, nor am I really, interested in running it. I am preparing to run Monster Hearts. Any tips for that game specifically? Well, really make sure you know what your people are comfortable with in terms of lines and veils. When I played Monster Hearts back in the day, this was, 10 plus 15 years ago, things were very different in the RPG scene. In terms of like what was acceptable and what was considered crossing a line and all this other stuff. You have to be very, very cognizant of what your group is comfortable with and what your group does, I think so. I was first introduced to the X card in my game of Monster Hearts, but to sort of highlight where the X card has come, or where we've gotten to. When I was first introduced to the X card, it wasn't called that. And it was a note card. There was like 2 or 3 of them on the table. And it had a red X on the one side and it had a green check mark on the other. And the idea was supposed to basically be, it was supposed to be used as a way to like vote or indicate support or maybe not support for a player while they were doing something without actually stopping them and kind of disrupting the game, right? So like if you were doing something, and you were taking an idea and running with it, or maybe you were giving, I don't know, you could have been giving a soliloquy in character, I might flip over, that green check mark and kind of tap it, on the table to basically show you like, yeah, dude, like keep going. Like, that's great. Like, I'm loving this. I'm with you. I'm supporting you. Give me more, go deeper, take it further. And so it was kind of both, supposed to be the yin and the yang. But given the Monster Hearts, it's, people are very, again, for whatever reason, we can brutally murder, I don't know. We could brutally murder an entire tribe of goblins, literally commit genocide, and everyone's like, yeah. But, if you start talking about sex, people get very, puritanical. I don't make the rules. It's just the way it is. And so, you have to be, that's the world we live in. So, correct. War crimes, completely acceptable, but God forbid you play up a messy breakup, right? The one is good, clean fun. The other one is, potentially triggering. So it is what it is. Again, I'm not offended by it, but I'm a fairly sex positive person. So, other people, not so much. It makes them very uncomfortable. Gamifying murder, gamifying, attraction and relationships, correct. Yeah, I think we are products of our society, 100%. I'm not saying that, you don't have to be uncomfortable with it. If you're uncomfortable with it, I respect that. Just saying I'm not. I'm not uncomfortable with it, is what I'm saying. Other than that, the other thing is too, is like, don't don't forget about the threat. I don't know if you're playing it as a one shot or if you're playing it as like a multi shot or like a campaign. But I love having like the I can't remember what they call it. I don't remember what they call it. It's behind my gigantic book. When you make the villain, the menace, that's it, the menace. So on the original book, it's on page 140. So when you start making the menace or the menace-I, the menopodes, lean into that. I think that makes the game a lot more fun when you have this direction as a result of the menace. Like, I remember one game that I ran up at the local game shop with some people I knew. One of the characters in one of the PCs was a serpentine, which is a playbook of like, you're literally you're a lizard folk, right? You're like you're like a secret reptile. The world is secretly run by by lizard people, by like reptile masters. And the idea is that this guy, this kid, this teenager at school, right? He comes from this long dynasty of serpentine, people. And his grandfather, I think, was like the mayor of the town. And he became the menace of our campaign, one of the menaces of our campaign. And so there was this great interpersonal drama because, the PC's grandfather was the big bad of the campaign, which I thought was really cool. And that added a lot of fun to the game. So I think a lot of people go like, I'm going to play Monster Hearts. Oh, it's just going to be vampires fucking. And I think that's missing the point. So, oh, yeah, there you go. Say some people just use the game to have their wet fantasies, which I don't want either. Yeah, correct. It's kind of like how like, apparently, again, I miss this, even though I've been playing RPGs for the last 30 years, like the horny bard trope. And like growing up and playing it, like no one I ever played with or saw or ever had this like horny bard trope. We did a whole thing where we like tried to figure out where and when that came from. Like we certainly had like the spoony bard, right? Or the silly bard or like the foppish bard, but like the horny bard, and then we were like, did it really just come from Sam Riegel? And it just became like so indoctrinated in a 5e D&D culture, it kind of almost like blinded people, or did it exist before that? Anyways, there was a whole discussion about this. And I'm like, I don't understand what bards have to do with being horny, but yeah. Yeah. I remember there was a big debate for a while. I don't remember when this was. If this was like the 3rd edition era or something, maybe it was the 5th edition era. But basically the discussion was like, was enchantment charm schools more evil than necromancy? Right? Like necromancy, it's a person's corpse, but they are dead. Whereas like enchantment charm, not just dominate, but like, just charm. I mean, that is, and like the idea was like, is it more evil to kill someone or to charm them? And I remember there was a lot of debate occurring in the TTRPG space about whether or not a charm person spell might actually be considered more vile and more of a heinous act than murdering somebody, And I was like, oh, damn. Or any sort of mental emotion, even like a calm emotions spell, right? Or a friendship spell or anything like that, right? Horny Bard came from charismancy, I guess. I guess people had high charisma and they were like, I'm going to use it to get laid. It's very strange. King Hodop says it did come from Sam Riegel, so. But I do think the horny bard concept, I do think it does predate Critical Role, but, Yeah, I've never, if so, I've never encountered it. And You know, no one I ever played with was like, I'm gonna seduce her. I'm gonna sleep with her and all her friends. I'm literally, I would be so uncomfortable with that person. I would never play a game with them ever again. So. See, you say that, Simon, but you know, personal autonomy is a big deal. When someone kills you, they kind of technically don't violate your personal autonomy. Again, I don't remember the exact nature of this conversation, but I remember it was quite vehement on the interwebs at the time. It's also possible that it may have been a secret conversation started by that group of players who always want to be a good necromancer because they love necromancers. Again, we could go off into a very, very we could go off into a very political element here. So I won't do it. But like, it's just like this idea of like Diablo 2. Am I stupid? Diablo 2 didn't have a bard. Necromancer. Yeah. Oh, Necromancers were in EverQuest. They were in Diablo 2, and people loved them, you know. The Necromancers have always been really, really popular, you know. And yeah, there you go. Look at that. Very appropriate for this stream, by the way. Now I bored. I love Necromancers. I'm the one who always wanted to be a good Necromancer. See, there you go. And that's the beauty of like, you know, I hate to say it, but like that's the beauty of like MMORPGs, right? Like none of that boring role-playing game shit gets in the way of you just having a good time. You could have a group of, you know, your 5 or 6 people in your party, and it's like 2 paladins and 2 necromancers, and you're like, you know what? Yeah, the paladins up front doing DPS and tanking right next to like two necro pets, you know? And I'm like, I'm here for it. Thumbs up. I don't care. I really don't care. I think necromancers are cool as a class. It's not for me. It's not my personal, you know, cup of tea, but I don't. Zarian in with the hot take. They ruined the paladin when they said they didn't need to be lawful good. Summoning has always been problematic. That is the problem, right? Most of these games are dominated and defined by their action economy, and yeah, summoners. You know, I played 2 summoners in Pathfinder 1. I had a gnome summoner, Lord Ebix Fire Soul. I think that was his name. And I also had a paladin summoner, Gestalt, so dual class, named Azata. And both of them were broken. And when I played a wizard in like 3.0, I was very fond of casting like Summon Monster 5, Summon Monster 6. Very powerful, very effective. Summon Monster 3 was okay. Ow. Well, Aaron, we've just been kind of shooting the shit and talking about, God, we were talking about YouTube analytics before, but yeah. What's up, Tundalus? Speaking of charisma, my buddy just texted me and said he had a hell of a chaotic week. Would you mind meeting up for a drink? So I will be meeting him up in a little bit. Was there ever any system that managed to make a summoner that didn't break the action economy? Yes. Battlezoo Eldamon. You quite literally summon your Eidolon or your Eldamon one at a time. Your character disappears, and then you get your Eldamon's abilities. So it's completely balanced, totally fair, and it's pretty good. Now, if you meant summoner like I summon 25 minions, no. Or D6 plus 2 minions or whatever, no. So I guess it also depends on what you decide as a summoner. See, growing up, okay, I played Final Fantasy 4 or whatever when I was like 10, right? Circa 92 or whatever. I think that's when Final Fantasy 4 came out, aka Final Fantasy 2 in America. Maybe it was 92. Sounds right, right? It was released 91 in Japan. But when was it released in America? Not quite sure. So it either came out 91, 92. Anyways, so when I think of a summoner, I think of Rydia, right? I think of, you have a caster who, occasionally casts a spell. They disappear, a big Eidolon, a big guardian force, a big summons, whatever, appears, does some massive big attack, and then fades away and comes back, and your character comes back, right? So for me, that's what a summoner really is, King Hodop says that doesn't count because you're swapping out characters and it doesn't count as summoning minions, whereas London says it's Eldamon hype. Trespasser Diabolus doesn't break the action economy, but it does break all sorts of other things. Fair. And, well, maybe a little bit of the action economy. Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, a PBTA style summoner would work because you don't really have an action economy, right? Like, when I give you the spotlight as a player, you could choose to do something with your squad of minions, or you could choose to do something with your pet, or you could choose to do something yourself, but it's not like you are guaranteed to get 27 actions a turn compared to everybody else's one, right? Edenism says, you and Trevor should have a discussion about traveling. It would be awesome. We might disagree a lot. I don't know what, I assume you mean Trevor Duvall. I don't know what his thoughts are on traveling. I mean, he comes from like that sim background, so I would expect him to be maybe a little bit more hyper procedural, roll 17 checks a day type thing, maybe. So. Well, it's interesting that you say that. You said that paladins are the ultimate heroes, not just the run-of-the-mill warriors. But it's interesting, right? A paladin technically wouldn't break the law to save somebody, right? So by that definition, wouldn't like a chaotic good or a neutral good person be more of a hero because they're willing to do whatever it would take as long as you save the day. Maybe. Lawful good characters aren't about protecting the individual. Lawful good characters are about protecting the society. And paladins are like an example of that, right? They are kind of like a super cop, in the best way, right? Where they represent, society, and their job is not just to defend the rights and the interest of the individual, it's also to represent and protect the sanctity of the society and the civilization, not just the health and the morality and the rights of the individual. I think what we think of as the hero, right, is probably closer to neutral good or chaotic good, right? Someone who I'm not going to let the laws. I don't care if that person was sentenced to death. They did nothing wrong, and I'm going to do what's right. So I think that for most people, hero is probably more, neutral good to even chaotic good. But yeah, if we're talking about heroism in that respect, because remember, lawful and chaos is your ethical axis, and then good and evil is your moral axis. So, there's this idea of not just what you do, but how you do it. And a paladin isn't willing to sacrifice how they do something in order to accomplish what they need to get done, right? Assuming that they are a true paladin, right? The paladin will not break faith. The paladin will not take shortcuts. The paladin will not make sacrifices. The paladin will not disobey, whatever, in order to achieve maximal good. So when we think about like the hero, it's probably not a paladin, actually. So now that doesn't mean I don't think paladins aren't particularly interesting, but I think it's understanding and representing what a paladin actually is, and I don't think they're the superheroes in any stretch of the imagination. But well, a good way to imagine, I think, a paladin is the same way that you would imagine a good, responsible, moral judge. Now, a judge isn't there in a good, an example of a good judge to just like make things up. They are there to enforce the law, but they are also there to utilize their judgment to try to make sure that justice is done and that the society and the rights of the individual are protected. And so the judge is there to serve as a sort of mediator and to understand that there are mitigating circumstances, but they aren't there to just ignore the law. That's not their job, right? That's that whole, like, what do they call it? When they'll say that a judge is writing law from the bench, right? That's not their job. That's the job of the legislation, at least here in America. And so, there's definitely a, now when you start talking about the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law, I think you're starting to become more neutral good. So that when you say that, I don't think you're being a good paladin. Just saying. And in fact, I think that in many cases, if we were being truly, strictly honest with ourselves, most people would end up losing their paladinhood and or changing their alignment. I think most people would end up playing their paladins wrong, And most people would probably end up playing their paladins neutral good. Because I think, like Jams TV, I think most people would end up embracing the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. You know. Yeah. And keep in mind, right, like Paladin existed in AD&D First Edition where the 9 alignment system came in. Before that, you just had law, neutral, chaos. There was no good. There was no evil. D&D was not about morality. It was about the epic cosmic battle between order and chaos, right? Essentially, civilization and the merciless hordes of barbarism, right? It's very fraught with, colonial attitudes and a bunch of other possibly problematic things, but that is what it was. Right. Paladins technically they weren't in OD&D. I don't think. Maybe they were added in one of the supplements, but most certainly they would have to be lawful. I mean, if they were added to original D&D, they would definitely have to be lawful. But they also weren't in basic D&D, which also used law, neutral, chaos, and had no good, had no evil. Well, I've talked about this a million times. Alignment systems exist so that you can play the D&D game. Without alignment systems, you cannot play D&D. Basically what it comes down to. So. We do, however, it is only available through our Patreon. So our Discord is not a public Discord. If you go to patreon.com/Knights of Last Call, you can join our Patreon, and then you get access. You get a link to our Discord, but it is not a public Discord, which, trust me, is for the best. Please explain how alignment is necessary to play D&D. Well, in short, think about almost every video game that you've ever played where you I don't know, walk into something, kill a bunch of people, and take all their goods. When you play Diablo, when you play World of Warcraft, when you play, I don't know, 99% of the games that you've probably ever played in your life that somehow in some way or shape or form resembled Dungeons and Dragons, you didn't think once about the morality of your character's actions. You just kill stuff, loot the corpses, and move on. Well, believe it or not, that attitude and that play structure came from D&D. The thing is with D&D is because we were role-playing, you had to make it okay. How do you make it okay? The only way you can make it okay is by having moral absolutism. By saying those creatures are evil, ergo it is good to murder them and steal from them. In our society, you could kill someone on accident, not even mean it, and that's a crime. It's called manslaughter. It may not be murder, but it is definitely a felony. So, in a RPG sense, how do you deal with this? Well, you make the bandits evil. You make the goblins evil. You make them quantifiably evil. We don't have shades of gray or shades of meaning, or they're not evil from their perspective, No, they're evil. They're team evil with a capital E, They're the other guys. And that means that you can just play the game, which I don't know about most of the D&D that you've played in your life or Pathfinder, but most of the D&D and Pathfinder that I've played in my life has involved killing lots of things and taking their stuff. So, assuming that is what your D&D game or Pathfinder game or whatever game revolves around, then, self-defense, sure. Define that when you're the one who's going into their cave. That's very like, Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah, right, exactly. You break into their home. So, hey, I kicked in your front door and I'm here to steal all of your possessions, and you attacked me. Self-defense, stand your ground. Yeah, no. So alignment, alignment existed so that you could, by the way, I'd point out that, yeah, right. It's the goblins in this case that are doing the self-defense, by the way. For example, if we described how a group of the village guard were, attacked as they entered into the goblin territory, they would be like, we need adventurers to go in there and root out the goblins. Why? The goblins were just self-defending their territory. That was an aggressive military action by the village guard. Nobody ever says that. But also that, even in the United States, the number of places, like not every state has self-defense. There's a lot of states that have what's it called? You have to give ground, right? Now there's exceptions, like in your home is usually, but in a lot of states, you have to, if you're not at home, like you have the right, you have the obligation to give ground. I can't remember what the exact term is, but it's different, So the idea that I could be getting attacked. Thank you. That's it. Duty to retreat. That's the exact word I was looking for. Thank you, Oshuli. Duty to retreat. In a lot of states in America, you have the duty to retreat. So you can't be like out in a public park and somebody starts shooting and, you pull out a gun and kill them and say, I was standing my ground. And it's like, no, like you have in this state, you have the duty to retreat. If you're not in your home, okay, or your place of business, you have the responsibility to just get the fuck out of there. You can't claim self-defense. So anyways, long story short, even self-defense doesn't really cut it, even here in a modern day, gun-obsessed America in every state, legally. To say nothing of the fact that this is you going into their house. So if anything, they have the castle doctrine to kill you. Right, and also remember, I am not a lawyer, so... So anyways, point is that most RPGs still rely heavily on killing some quantifiably sapient or sentient creatures. If all you fight are animals and, mindless beasts, cool. But if you start fighting things with int 4 or int 5 or int 6, those are sapient, sentient creatures. And you are technically doing murder or manslaughter or any number of things. To say nothing of the fact that, the concept of war and whether it's a formal declaration, or you just a bunch of vigilantes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, So it's a very messy situation. Right. But like as an example, Simon, okay, let's say the United States of America was at war with, I don't know, I'll pick some random country, Argentina. The Falklands have become a focus point again. The United States of America is at war with Argentina. Okay. International law recognizes that under, certain governed conventions, those people are allowed to attack. Could Derek, who is not a member of the United States military forces, could I go to Argentina and start clipping down Argentinians? No, that is still a crime. So even though we're at war, I'm not part of a recognized military outfit, whatever, part of that formal declaration. I'm not part of it. So even in that situation, there's a situation. But outside of all of that, it's just about the moral ease of saying, hey, the goblins are evil. We should go kill them and then not feel bad about it. And that's why alignment, is important. Correct. Right. A lot of this came from the work of Tolkien, who did change some of his minds in the later years. But Tolkien wrote that. I'll give you an example. Speaking of alignment, in this game, the heroes have a resource called hope. And hope is sort of, it's just for the PCs. It's, what makes you a hero, right? You have this strength, this deep reserve that you can call upon, the hope. Every NPC in this book has one of two resources: hate or resolve. And if your character has hate, it means that you are a servant of the enemy in the truest of senses. Like, for example, you could be a group of humans who are serving, Saruman or serving Sauron, and your character, that NPC, would have resolve. Killing creatures with resolve is a crime. It's you gain evil points. Killing creatures with hate never is. Creatures with hate, when they reduced to 0 hate, they will never surrender. They will run away, they will flee, but they will never show mercy, and they will never show, they'll never show mercy, they'll never show peace. Okay? So in other words, in this game, creatures with hate, which is orcs, trolls, Uruk-hai, that stuff, Nazgul, basically cannot be bargained with, cannot be bribed, cannot be bullied. They are evil through and through to the very core of their beings. But ultimately, what it really comes down to is when we could sit down to play D&D, just like when you sit down to play Diablo, you don't want to sit there and think about, am I doing the right thing? Should I be killing these people? I don't know. Is it right? No, you just want to kill things and take their stuff. It's a game. And so it's a way to enable you to play the game and not get into these conversations that we're having right now, which is this massive moral conundrum. And then somebody brings it up and everybody goes, oh, here we go. But it does dictate your actions, because in older games, if your alignment changes, you lost all of the experience points that you had gained for that level, and you required double the experience points to get to your next level. So it was a big deal. In fact, there's a page in the original Dungeon Master's Guide that is used to track your player's alignment on a grid and do what the game literally calls alignment audits to update where your characters are on the alignment chart, and then make a decision as the game master about whether or not a character has now shifted into a new alignment, in which case you immediately penalize them by causing them to lose all of the experience they had gained for the current level. They have to start over, and now they need double the experience points that they need to get to their next level. So, yeah. But, Zarian, I might argue that a big part of Pendragon might even necessarily be that you and your players want to engage with sort of the morality of your actions, and the king, our Lord has given us this command to root out these these Saxons, and you get there and it's a bunch of women and kids. Is it right? Is it wrong? What about my passion? Or what about my personality trait of mercy? What about my Lord? What about my commandment to duty? What about my fidelity to, my Lord? Right? And I think that game, in a certain sense, wants you and hopefully the players want to kind of grapple with these very heady decisions and discussions. My general experience has been, at least back from 1970s to modern day, most D&D players do not. So. They just want to kill stuff and take their stuff, so respect. Yeah. I mean, to quote Mark Rosewater, right? I think a lot of moral conversations, they may be very interesting, but they aren't necessarily fun. Okay. And as we said before, fun and interesting can both lead to enjoyment, But what is it that your group gets enjoyment from? Does your group get enjoyment from interesting things or from fun things? Most of these games lend towards things. Yes, also moral conversations are very Phoenix coded design. Yes, Tom, 100%. In fact, 1,000. That's probably like the boilerplate tagline of a Phoenix coded design choice. Well done. I completely agree with you, Tom. And yes, moral conversations usually aren't very fun, right? They can make you feel awkward. They could lead to some tension. It could lead to some maybe some heated conversation. It could be very interesting. It could lead to some really fascinating debates and whatever. And then meanwhile, there's the guy sitting in the corner going like, "Oh my God, it's Friday night. I hired a babysitter so I could come to this fucking game session. What the fuck are we doing? For the love of God, please." And I you know what? And I respect that D&D, as written, was trying to help that guy out or that girl out, you know? So that's why I say, you know, D&D can't exist without alignment. More or less. Otherwise you're just murdering people. And that's really what it comes down to. You know, are the creatures that you fight, are they people? And if they, you know, if they're people, then what you're doing is probably doing murder or manslaughter or some sort of crime. It does, sort of. Does Dungeon World 2 have it? I don't know. I don't think so. Dungeon World 1 had it, sort of. It was like an XP trigger, I think, if I can remember correctly. Sure. North, south, east, west. Sometimes, you know, you get one of those weird northeast diagonal passages. Shu says, wait, y'all don't play TTRPGs to live out your redacted fantasies so that you don't feel the urges to unleash them upon the populace? So here, this is a trope that I'm going to be completely honest with you. I absolutely hate living dungeons. Sentient dungeons, living dungeons, hate them. I couldn't tell you why. I don't know why. I understand it's a thing that's very popular. People do them, trope. I hate them. I don't know why. I just hate them. And 13th Age, a game I love, has this big thing about literal living dungeons that they like crawl their way up from the depths of the earth. They erupt onto the surface and then you go into them. It's like a whole part of the lore of 13th Age, and I hate them. So you've talked about how you don't want to play Daggerheart online. Do you feel the same way about Dungeon World? You mean like on a VTT? I mean, I don't like VTTs, period. But Dungeon World doesn't have the same kind of like fiddliness of like cards and trackers and tokens. So I'd probably be a little bit more okay with it. But honestly, yeah, kind of, sort of. I still kind of feel with that. Roll for Combat would like a word with you. Yes, it's true. Yes, Thief of the Stone Eye. That's exactly right. But that's like a thing. It's not just a unique thing. There's like living dungeons is a thing in 13th Age. Yeah, no, I'm not shitting on them. Like, I get it. Like, I could even see where it could be cool. It's just not for me, you know? No, yeah, it's all sorts of different things. It could be like, yeah, it could be like a Leviathan. It could be like a massive mega creature. If you look up 13th Age, they've got this whole thing about living sentient dungeons. I don't even know where my 13th Age book is. Here it is. Is there an index? Maybe. $265. Dungeons. Some dungeons were built by mortal rulers. Others were constructed by spells and powers of wizards and demons. Other special dungeons, known as living dungeons, rise spontaneously from beneath the underworld, moving upward steadily towards the surface as they spiral across the map. Living dungeons don't follow any logic. They're bizarre expressions of malignant magic. If a living dungeon survives to break out onto the surface of the world, it could become a permanent feature of the landscape, or at least a permanent as a dungeon is allowed to be in a world of heroes. Adventurers, especially adventurers favoring heroic paths, often attempt to slay living dungeons before they breach. Some living dungeons can be slain by eliminating all of their monsters. Others have actual beating crystalline hearts and can be slain by specific rituals whose components and clues are hidden and found amongst their corridors and chests. More than one party of adventurers has observed that most living dungeons have some form of a death wish, but the servants of the villainous icons attempt to locate living dungeons and get them to the surface, where they will magnify that villainous icon's power. It's just weird. Anyways, long story short, it's just like kind of like it's part of this game's like excuse for why you might just have dungeons everywhere, basically. And go from there. So yeah, it's kind of like a mimic as a whole dungeon. Yeah, it's a kind of a way of what it is. Yeah. But yeah. Anyways. All right, folks. Well, I am going to dip off. Thank you for joining me while I was a little bit bored. Look at that. I got a clutch come through. My buddy said he wants to meet up for a quick drink, so I'm going to go meet up with him. I owe him that. And it was fun hanging out with you. Thank you guys for doing that with me. We'll be back later. Who knows? You never know with Night's Last Call. Could be tomorrow. Could be in the middle of the night. You don't know. You always have to stay. You have to stay on your toes. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Nights of Last Call. Peace.